I'm recording. All right, so on Tuesday, we started sessions and cookies, and I'll do some more session stuff. And this could probably just as well be cookie stuff, but sort of going back and forth between pages and sort of making it so that you can, if it's the first time, you have to go through the first page to get to the second page. But later on, you could go directly to the second page and have that session information remembered and just sort of directly populate the second page. So that's what we're doing this time with sessions. All right. Any questions before I start that? No. And this is the end of the material for the Flask test for test 2. And then we'll start after the break introducing the database component. And then I'll be able to tell you what your project is because it involves a database. And then maybe the second week after break, we'll have a test, the test 2. Okay. And nobody's told me any dates I can't do yet. All right, so let's see this first example. So I'm going to copy these files into 341. I'm working with Flask 2, VE and V, my virtual environment. Pasting that in there. That is in my VE and V. It's working with somebody who had these files at the same level as the VE and V rather than in the VE and V. And I don't know, that confuses me. Okay, and so then I need my Visual Studio Code. I need that opened up to my virtual environment, file, open folder, Flask 2 VENV, okay. And what did I just download? I downloaded app session, form session. So I have a little log on. So I have a submit field. I have a string field. I have a password field. So this is Flask and WT Forms version of what an HTML thing has. They have a password type input, and it's pretty much like a text input, an HTML, except as the user types, what is being typed is written just out in sort of some character like a star or something. So and then we're had some input, some length requirements, some input requirement. We're going to enter a username, a password. So the username will be a string field, the password will be a password field, and it'll be a submit button. So somebody's just doing a quick login. And then here I am in the app, in the routes. Once I am returning from the form, then I am setting a session variable equal to the result. So they send me a username and I'm making a session variable for that username. And if you remember, we usually have sort of two forms, or the form and the form handler together in one route. That's what we've been doing a lot of. And I changed it up on you. So this is something for you to sort of notice that's different with these, is that I'm not, it's not the handler which now I've made the welcome, is a different routes. So there's a logon form route and a welcome route. And what I usually call the handler, and here I still called it handler, logon form handler, is in the welcome route. And so then the if, which usually I would render the template with the handler, I instead redirect to the welcome route. Okay, so this breaks our normal pattern. Our normal pattern, we had the form and the form handler as a single route. I'm making them different routes. And so then if the validation is, if the form validates, I'm remembering something in a session. I'm remembering the data. I'm remembering the data, the username data specifically as a session. And then I'm going over to the welcome form. So I'm redirecting to a different route. And in that different route, I'm saying here in the other route that if the session has a username, move on to the handler. Otherwise, redirect me back to the logon. So this is if they try to go to the welcome form first. And if they haven't remembered a username, I'm sending them back. And this is for the logon form. If it was a valid submission to the logon form, I will redirect them to welcome. Otherwise, I'll send them back to the logon form. Okay, so that is the game here with the introduction also of a session. So I'm looking for the logon form. Logon form has a username, has a password, has a submit button, and a little message down here. If you try to go to the welcome page before you start a session, it sends you back to the logon page. If you try to go to the welcome page after that, it will welcome you to the welcome page because you've established a session and you're good. So I put in some navigation, just an easy way for us to try to move over to the welcome page. And we will see that it doesn't work, that we're not, we can't move to the welcome site, or it moves us there and moves us right back if we haven't established a session. But if we have established a session, then we're okay. And the session is established here when we set a session variable. And then the handler, what does the handler do? A logon handler just says, if the session variable is defined, say hi, otherwise say bad. It shouldn't ever say bad because we shouldn't get here if we weren't, if we didn't have a session set up, we shouldn't be able to get here. Okay. So let's give this a whirl. So what was this called? App session. So app session. Not session, session. Okay. And so here I am. And it's just asking for a username and a password, and it is not now. I didn't ever test that it was a good username and good password. I didn't do anything like that. I'm just saying, here's some username, here's some password. Goat, I think, is the password. Here you see the password property. First, let me try the let me try to go to welcome. This was a link to the welcome route. I'm going to view the page source. I'm trying to, it's just an anchor tag that goes to welcome. But I haven't logged on yet. If I try to go to welcome, it brings me back to the logon form. Now I have to be Fred again and made the password GOAT, but you can't see it. It doesn't matter. I'm not even testing it. But now if I log on, I go over to the welcome page because I established a session. There's a username in the session, and there it is. Hi, Fred. And I can go back. And now if I click the welcome navigate, I can go over to welcome because I've established the session. If I open up a new tab, I'm going to copy this, open up a new tab. And I can open up a new tab because it's about a session. And so long as the browser's open, I'm good. If I close the browser, let me remember that, and close the browser, open a browser, paste it in there. I'm trying to go to welcome. It sends me to log form. When you close the browser, it stops the session. If we'd worked with cookies, that would work. If I work with a cookie with a lifetime, that would work because I would have established a cookie and so I could log on. So that's the difference again between session and cookie, that session just works while the browser's up. Once the browser's down, the session's gone. But if we had remembered stuff based on a cookie, then we could have moved straight to welcome. So websites that remember you, even after you close your browser, that's a cookie. Okay. And with slight modifications, everything we're doing right now can be done with cookies instead of sessions. But I just opted for sessions here. Okay, so that's version 1. I split out, one more time, I split out the two forms, the form and the form handler, into separate routes. Because one of the things I wanted to do was allow the person, once they've established the session, to go to the second page. Even if they're not submitting the form, I've remembered in the session the information from the second form, and therefore it makes sense to allow them to go directly to the second form. That's why I made it a new route. I gave it a new address so that somebody could go directly there, provided they've done what I required, which was them to establish the session. Questions? No. Okay. So close all these things, bring down version 2. Version 2 is just, there was no, I said I was logging on, but I didn't test a username and I didn't test the password. So item number 2 is just some YouTube video I had where the guy was talking about sessions. So if you want to watch that, watch that. Here I'm just adding to the logging on some testing of, I have like a handful of usernames and passwords that I will accept the same from it's the usernames and passwords from some previous example we did. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Downloads, a session more, that's what I want. 341, Flask 2, virtual environment, paste. Okay. So what's over here now? A form session is still the same. Username, password, submit. App session has changed. I've established, I just did it the way we did it before. So this was before we had dictionaries and objects and all those good things. So I just made it parallel arrays because that's what we did before. I said the good usernames are Groucho, Chico, Harpo, Zeppo. The good passwords, the corresponding passwords are Swordfish, Piano, Silent, and whatever. And now I'm just doing some if. So I have a session for the username. I have a session for the error. So I have a session, an error session variable. And I have, so if I find the username, if the result username, that's what the user sent me, result username. If that's in my set of usernames, then I'm finding the index, and then I'm testing the password, result password, to the passwords with that same index. And if that's good, then I'm setting the session variable for the username equal to the results for the username and redirecting them to the welcome page. If the passwords don't match, I was printing out bad password, which is just a console thing, nothing a user would see. And I am establishing a session variable that has the key error and a value of entered bad data, add bad center, entered bad password, and the else of the first if the username was in the list of usernames, if result username, what the user entered, was in my list of proper usernames. If that was not true, then I set up an error session variable, same key error, but just a different value, entered bad username. And I printed here on the console bad username. And okay. Now let's look at the log on form. Log on form. Okay. So I have up here a section about asking if the session error is defined. So if there was an error, then the session error will be defined, and I'm going to display the error message. So if I try to log on as somebody other than one of these 4 users, I'm going to establish an error, a session variable with a key error and some value, and I'm going to display that value. Okay. And the rest was the same, label username and form username, password, and submit. So I added a session that's going to display the error, and I put it in my error class. If I still have the same style, I don't know if I do, but if I still have the same style, that shows up as like orange, red writing on orange background or something, but I might have changed the style. I can't recall. All right. And then did I do anything to the form handler? No. I should only get over here if it was good, if I established a good username, and then it says hide that username. All right, so let's Control C to stop the previous thing. Start the new one running. Okay, so if I'm Fred and Goat and try to log on, it was a bad username. So that is that, yeah, it is in that red on orange background for the error. And so I had a bad username. If I put in Groucho, which is good, but Goat, which is bad, then I get a different error message. So I have a session variable. I'm coming back to the logon form. I'm redirected back to the logon form. But I've established a session variable. And here's the message for the session variable. If Groucho was swordfish, I think. If I log on, then that is good. I've established a username session variable, and I move on to the welcome form and display that session variable. Okay. So, and then I can go directly, once I've established the session, I can go directly to welcome like we showed before. And if you wanted to be able to close the browser and do it, we would switch out our sessions and make them cookies. Questions? No. Okay. So then one more example. I want to do something like what we were doing before, And so what I had as one thing I had to do before was ordering a hamburger with some toppings. And I want to remember that. So just remembering more than just a username, basically. So that will be my last demo. Close all these. Go to Canvas. So this is Flask, FG, 5 guys with a session. So I'm going to have the more or less what we had before on 5 guys. I kind of pared down the handler, but you could reestablish the handler with session variables. I was just lazy. So, all right. So we're putting this in 341, in Flask 2, in virtual environment. Pasting it. I'm looking for Forms FG. I don't think that changes. App FG session, that is a new set of routes because I'm splitting out the routes. And then there were some new other things as well. Okay, so Forms FG, App FG session, and I changed the handler. I think I kept the form the same, but I changed the handler. Because in the handler, I'm going to work with not the result, but I'm going to work with the session variable. So that's why I'm working with a different handler. Okay. So let's start with forms FG. And what am I doing? I'm reading a JSON file because that's where I'm getting some of my options from. So that's stuff we did before. So we read a local file to pick out the choices. So that's in 5 guys here. So there were burgers and there were levels. So that's what's in the JSON file. We are reading the JSON file. Here is my famous little tuple maker. And I'm making tuples for the burgers and for the levels. And so this is all the stuff we had before. The multi-check box, that makes check boxes. The burgers were radio buttons. The cooking level was radio buttons. The toppings were check boxes. There was a Boolean field for fries. That's what was driving me crazy this morning. And then there was a hidden field for the price of the fries, which I didn't do anything with. But you can get that back. I was just getting the session stuff going. And so I sort of scaled down the handler. Okay, so that is the form, not really changed. Here's the app session. This part has changed. First change is now there are going to be more routes. There's a default route that takes you to the form. There's a form route, but if the form route is successful, it's going to redirect you to the handler route. Then the handler route takes you to the handler if there's a session. So same as logging on. If somebody's ordered a burger, and if I remember that they've ordered a burger because of their session, I can move them straight to the order page. If they've not established a session, if we've lost their session, then we've got to send them back to the order page. Okay. So this is our check. Is there a burger in the session? Then I can move on to the handler page. If there's not, then I'm taking you back to the form so you can order a burger. Okay. Here's the form. If the form is valid on submit, then I am printing some stuff out. I'm establishing a session burger for a session variable for the burger, a session variable for the level, a session variable for the toppings. The toppings are a little bit different because the topping is an array, but I can have a session variable that's an array. That's fine. I made a session variable for the fries, sort of either way. So in terms of the result, I have a result fries if they ask for fries, and I don't have a result fries if they don't want fries. That's the way the Boolean field works. You sort of either have it or you don't. But I ask that if there's fries in the result, then my session fries is a Y, and otherwise my session fries is a no. So I made up here for the radio buttons and even for the topping, I just sort of made the session variable sort of correspond to the result variable. But I was finding it a bit awkward to, sometimes have a session variable and sometimes not have a session variable. I can do it, but I don't know. I was going around in circles and this is where the circle ended. So that's what I have. So if they ordered fries, then fries will be in the result. Then I'll set the session variable for fries equal to Y. And otherwise I'll set the session variable for fries equal to N. And then I'll move on to the handler. If something went wrong in all of this, I'll go back to the form. Okay. And then on the handler, I'm just working with the session variables. So instead of working with the result, which is what the user put in, I'm working with the session. The session came from what the user put in. But the difference is that the session will be remembered. So long as the browser's open, if I do other things but keep the browser open, the session stays the same. I can come to the order page and remember what was ordered because it's in the session. But if I've closed, but if I didn't have session variables, and I can have, as long as the browser's open, I can have other tabs. So I can sort of close, I can open a tab to, I don't know, Yahoo, and then close my my tab that's about the burger, and then reopen a new tab and go to the order page, and it will remember if I'm working with sessions. If I were working with the order form without session variables, and I closed the tab and came back and reestablished the tab, I would have lost my information and I'd have to like reorder my burger. Okay, so that is the game here. That's not the right, didn't change the app. So it is, what is it now? App FG session. App FG underscore session, SESS for session. All right, so here is, I'm gonna have a cheeseburger. I want it well done. I'm gonna have mushrooms and onions, and I want fries. And there is everything. Okay. So I'm going to remember this route, the handler. It remembers everything for me. So I've opened up this browser, another tab, but the browser stays open. I'm closing this. I'm opening a new tab. I'm coming here. And it remembered my stuff because it's a session. So that's the purpose of a session. And then a cookie, I could even close the browser. With a session, I can close a tab and it will remember. With a cookie, I can close the browser and it will remember. Does it allow me to go back? That's interesting. Probably not. No, it doesn't allow me to go back. Well, it allows me to go back, but that's where I came back from. Okay. And let me control click. Okay, there I am back here. And I can also just, I didn't give myself any navigation, but I could put something, try to go directly to the handler. But let me, let me just reorder without the fries. So everything's working. I just ordered a cheeseburger, medium well, ketchup and mustard, no fries. Now, what I didn't put back in because I was lazy was splitting it up, parsing it as a float, deciding, whether or not there were fries, adding the price of the fries. That part's all the same, except it's now the session variable rather than the result. The result was directly from the user working the form. The session is this intermediate, but it's remembered longer. But you can still do the same Jinja operations. You can still split, you can still cast, you can still add. All right. Any questions? All right. So what are you going to do? Something like that, only different. So you're going to make a page that that was dumb. Okay. So you're making a survey about pain relievers. They enter an email. So you don't have to test them. That, it's not like, oh, here are the 5 emails you're allowed to have. It's not, you're not logging in, you're just doing a survey, but they want to be able to email you. So look up, make sure in the validators, there's an email validator. So make that an email validator. And then there's a place where they can tell you their age range, and that will be a radio button. They're only in one age range. But then there's a section with check boxes. They can tell you any number of pain relievers they've taken in the last, I don't know, month, or make something up. And a button. So they're going to have radio buttons, check boxes, a button. They're going to have a string field with an email validator. Last time I gave this, a lot of people turned it into my users, Groucho and Chico, and gave them email addresses, probably gmail.com addresses or something. I'm not looking for that. I just want it to be a valid email. Anybody can take the survey, but they must give me a valid email. And then I want you to work with sessions. So if they try to jump to the result page, I don't know, maybe there's a coupon on the result page or something. I'm just making crap up, but there's some reason they might want to go to the result page, and we don't want them to go to the result page unless they fill things out. So you only you only allow them in your routes to go to the second page, to the result page, if they've established a session. So if you require them to enter the age and require them to enter an email address, they're not going to be allowed off the form unless they've filled those out. Make sure it's a valid email, make sure they've filled out an age. They might not have taken any pain reliever, so that's, you don't put input required on the pain reliever, because in checkboxes, a possible option is none. But you have a validation here, you have a validation here. They can't just by addresses get to the second page, because you only allow them on the second page if the session variable has been established, and the session variable is only established by them having entered a good email and a good age. So they can only get to the second page if they've gone through the first page. But once they've gone and filled out the survey, then they can go to the second page directly. So you've said, fill out my survey, and then there's a coupon, and now somebody's filled out the survey, and the phone rang, and they did this, that, and the other thing, and now they've lost the page. But if they go right to the result page, they can get their coupon without redoing the survey. Okay. And so work with session variables for the pain reliever result, for the age result, for the email results. So I want you to see you working with session variables. If you wanted to work with cookies instead, I would take it if you want that experience. But with the example I gave you was session, so that's all I'm expecting from you. And just a little doodah thing, if they said they've taken 3 or more pain relievers lately, then add a little message to say, ask your physician about that. Questions? Any questions? No, I will stop recording then.